evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, a very special episode with a very special guest, Bosch Fawstin, the world's first anti-jihad comic book author and illustrator. He is the Eisner Award-nominated cartoonist who is the creator of the new comic book series, The Infidel, featuring Pigman, the superhero who is waging a new war against Islam. Bosch Fawstin, welcome to the Glazov Gang.
Thanks for having me.
An honor and a privilege to have you here.
Appreciate that.
Let's do this in the beginning and the end before we get into our discussion. Very quickly, tell us about The Infidel featuring Pigman and where our viewers can find
You can find it at Comixology. It's a website, it's an app, and that's the only place I accepted my work after years of trying to get to publishers and editors, and they accepted it happily, which is great. And it's available there. You want to tell you about The Infidel, the series?
Well, we'll start with
Sure.
that. I just want to start with everyone going to comixology.com,
Yep.
comixology.com, where you can get Bosch Fawstin's work, which is the comic book series, The Infidel, featuring Pigman.
Thank you.
Bosch, let us begin with what this comic book series is about.
Well, it's about twin brothers based on me. It's as if I split myself in two. And one brother, post 9/11, right after 9/11, rejects Islam completely and creates a superhero named Pigman, who wears pigskin leather to, as I put it, exploit the enemy's bigotry. And then the other brother completely embraces Islam, submits to it. And through the course of the story, they have escalating conflicts with one another, each issue. And their story is echoed by the story of Pigman versus Super Jihad. And I don't want to give too much away with what happens, but as you know, things get worse and worse when you deal with these fanatics of Islam.
Why are you the first anti-jihad comic book author and illustrator? How come there aren't any others?
I don't know. There was one years ago, I forgot the name of it, I'm sorry, whoever's out there. They had a soldier come out and it was one comic and he fought some, I guess, jihadists, but it didn't really take off. And then Frank Miller also created Holy Terror, which was the fixer. It was originally a Batman story versus Al-Qaeda. And I guess at the end, DC, who owns Batman, probably backed off, in terms of controversy. So Frank Miller released it. He released it after I released Pigman. But I think it has to do with my background. The reason why I felt it had to do is my background post 9/11. 9/11 came and I wanted to revisit, Islam. I wanted to figure out these killers, were they true believers? Were they the followers of Islam? Did they actually, bring the book to life? And I found out that they did. And that's why I think after that, I just took it as deadly serious as I possibly could. I studied it as if my life depended on it, because I wanted to respond to it. I'm not a soldier, I'm an artist, so I figured the best way I could respond to this is by telling a story. And that's when the Pigman character came to life, for myself. At first, I thought about Captain America, because he's the most patriotic superhero. And then I said, well, Marvel would never allow me to do anything with Captain America. They would never allow me to have him say or do what he should say and do. So then I started thinking about my background. And I said, well, what was it that Muslims despised more than anything, besides infidels and Jews? And the pig. When the pig came up on television, my mom, had a really disgusted look in her face. Turn a channel. Bacon, was not allowed in my family. A cousin of mine bought the wrong kind of bologna once and got beaten for it. And so I said, well,
how old was he?
She was probably 8 or 9. Probably, we lived in the Bronx and we went to a local store and got the wrong kind of bologna, the pork kind, the non-kosher. And then, so I said, well, I'm going to wrap my anti-jihad superhero in pigskin leather. And that way, psychologically, he can have a little edge against the enemy because they don't want to be anywhere near pig because they might lose their spot in paradise. And that's why Pigman advertised that fact, very, very loudly, very, very clearly.
Why? Just a sec. Why won't they find their spot in paradise?
Because they'll become tainted. It's a filthy creature was. They were exposed to the filth of pigs. And the way, I make a joke about it, I say, well, if a pig is so disgusting, why did Allah create the pig? They come back with, well, the reason was, no, why? If it's such a vile, disgusting creature. But anyway, that was my thinking. I wanted
Should
to
our
create-
soldiers be wearing pigskins?
Sure, why not? And advertise it. Make it known.
Bosch, let us focus in on what you've just been discussing in terms of your background. Bosch Fawstin is the first anti-jihad cartoonist, and yet he's also a former Muslim.
Yeah.
Let's get into, if you don't mind, a little bit more detail about your upbringing as a Muslim.
Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in the Bronx to Albanian Muslim parents. And while we were quote-unquote moderate, as they say, the misogyny, the Jew hatred, there was nothing moderate about it at all.
In your family?
In my family. Most of the women in my family were beaten, from my mother to my sister, you know, from my father to beating her up to her husband beating her up. And it was the norm, it was the accepted, it was the given.
I'm sorry for interrupting here, Bosch, and I want to also be tender with your privacy on these painful issues because this is your family, but your mom and your sister were beaten in front of you as a child?
Absolutely, and we were beaten as well.
But this was considered normal?
It was absolute norm. Whenever the man got pissed off, he had every right to just unleash on his wife.
But there was also a connotation that this is connected to Islam.
Absolutely.
Because one could say, oh, you grew up
European
in an abusive...
something,
yeah.
yeah.
How did you know that it was also...
Because it wasn't just my father, it was my uncles and my cousins and beating up their wives. And there was one cousin of mine who kicked his wife down the steps in front of everybody. The whole family was there. And no one did anything. No one said anything.
How old were you?
Must have been probably we went from the Bronx to Jersey, 10 years old.
Okay, and you received the understanding that this is normal and that women should be beaten and that it's Islamically sanctioned.
No doubt about it.
And did you begin at some point to believe this is right? Or
Absolutely.
I'm interested in the conscience.
You know what?
Tell me about your conscience as a young boy.
We were born and raised in America. And going to school and having even Jewish friends, we understood this is horrific. And I got to say, jealous of my friends who lived relatively normal lives. It was unheard of for my friend's mother to be beaten by his father. It was unheard of for him to be beaten. Whereas us, it was always the case. But also in terms of the Jew hatred as well. Just one thing also about the misogyny. I walked in one day and my mom was crying heavily. And I said, what happened? What happened? I was really concerned. And I realized that she was mourning the birth of my first niece because it's a girl. And girls are worthless, according to Islam. And she would never have a normal life. And my mom had in her head that it's the inevitability of it all. She will never, ever be normal. She'll have to be sent off to a Muslim to be married, a Muslim who she never meets.
Bosch, the women, you refer to your wife, to your mom and to your sisters, did they struggle against this, rebel against this, or somewhere did they internalize that this was
my mother
right?
Completely agreed.
She agreed with her own abuse as well.
Absolutely right. They tend to, the religion tells them that their necessary evil is to bring in male Muslim heirs. And outside of that, not much value. And my sister broke free.
Okay.
My sister was sent off to marry someone that she never met. I think she met him on one occasion once just to see each other, but she more or less met him on her wedding day. And the sick thing is my mom told her at one point before she got married, look, he's going to beat you. And he's going to come to you and you got to accept it. It is what it is. And it was shocking to hear that, when my sister related to me. And that's why when my sister got married, quote unquote, we couldn't go to the wedding. I don't know if it's an Albanian tradition or a Muslim tradition where the immediate family of the bride cannot go to the wedding. I don't know exactly. I'd like to find that out one day. But she naturally became a victim of abuse to her own husband. But within a year, she got the hell out.
Okay.
She got out and she was called every name in a book a whore. And she broke free, and she left Islam. And, it was something that was unheard of also. I think she inspired some of my younger cousins who never even got arranged marriage after that. They rejected it outright.
Bosch, you had some Jewish friends growing up in the Bronx,
Yes.
but within your household you heard what?
Yahudi, it's an Arabic term for Jew, which is interesting because we spoke Albanian, but they adopted the Arabic term for Jews. They're the scum of the earth, Jews. My cousins, my immediate family, they admired Hitler. That's why I refer to Hitler as Islam's favorite infidel, because he killed more Jews than anyone. I remember this one quote-unquote Palestinian post 9/11 said something about Hitler. He says, well, he was great, but he didn't kill enough Jews, meaning he didn't kill all Jews.
Bosch, and swirling around in your consciousness, in your heart, in your soul, you broke free with Islam somewhere inside as you were growing older.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And so 9/11, tell us about your own journey up to 9/11 and where you broke free and also decided to do what you do.
I more or less phased out of Islam in my mid-teens. I phased out of it. It wasn't a heartbreak. It wasn't something particular. But I knew that when I started taking morality seriously, I had to get the hell out, technically, because it had nothing for me. And then I found Ayn Rand's philosophy. I found it through the Fountainhead movie.
And of Jewish descent.
Cooper, yes.
She's of Jewish.
Yes, she was. She didn't, acknowledge herself as a Jew, but she definitely came from Jewish, and that's why I say I come from the most misogynistic, Jew-hating ideology to the philosophy created by a woman of Jewish descent. And that's when I started taking morality seriously. I realized that a morality based in reality, I was ready to embrace that. And a number of years went by, and I started to go to school to start to learn how to be a cartoonist, and that's when 9/11 hit. And I decided, well, I'm going to have to respond to this with my work. And that's when I started thinking about Pigman, as I mentioned in the opening, a character to face the enemy in a way that we haven't seen, really.
You're doing something that our leadership should be doing.
I mean, just taking it to the enemy in a ferocious way. And, I think about our leadership. I tweeted something the other day. I said, Islam gives the enemy the motivation to kill us, but our leaders give them the belief that they're going to win. Islam doesn't give them the belief that they're going to win. They might have any prophecy that but our leaders, when they look at our leaders like Cameron and Bush and Obama, praising Islam as if it's their own religion, they look at that and they said, we got this. We're going to take these guys out eventually. Because they can get to us because our leaders are not holding the fort. They're embracing the ideology that is waging war on the civilized world by saying it's nothing. It's not Islamic. ISIS has nothing to do with Islam.
They're lying to us.
They're absolutely lying to us and to themselves.
And to themselves.
But the scary thing is, they have betrayed us. It's a world historical betrayal. This is 1,000 years of jihad going on. And in a nuclear age, it's time to get serious here. It's time to actually tell the truth. Because if we don't tell the truth, we can never act on it. And in terms of politicians out there, Geert Wilders is the most honest, the most direct. But in terms of our country, has some politicians like Alan West. He used to say Islam. Now he says, I think, Islamism, some other terms. He's softened his bitch a little. But Ted Cruz is strong on the economy, strong against Obamacare, he's strong for the Constitution, and he uses the term jihad, the proper term to define the enemy's war on us. And I've never heard him talk up Islam. Never. Whether he will, I don't know. But he never has, which is huge for me. Even Rand Paul came out the other day. The problem is not Islam. The problem is something else,
Bosch, what led you to become a cartoonist? What made you interested in art and drawing? Oh,
man. My brother in the Bronx used to bring home comics, Hulk, Spider-Man, Superman. I fell in love with them. Absolutely fell in love with them, with the heroism, with the drawings, with the stories that were being told. And I always dreamt about doing them one day. And I went through a whole path. I wanted to be a director, I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a musician, I wanted to be, and at one point, I think I was 25, I said, what do you really, really love more than anything? I said, comic books, superhero comic books in particular. And it's interesting because my first graphic novel took place in a restaurant. It had nothing to do with superheroes, but had to do with things that I understood pretty well. And that's why with the Infidel, I get the best of both worlds. I get the drama of the brother story, and then the superhero aspect of it. So it's a story within a story.
We're running out of time.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about Pigman.
Well, Pigman is Frank Warner He's also an ex-Muslim. And he used to write books against jihad and Islam for years. And then he literally saw 9/11 in ground zero. He saw people jumping out of the towers. He witnessed his friend Muhammad, after the second plane hit, go onto the ground and start saying Allahu Akbar and praying. He ends up being super jihad, his enemy. Well, his former friend, now enemy. And he decided, well, he looked at the response of Bush, he looked at the response of the West and said, this is unacceptable. Islam does not mean peace. The only reason why we're talking about Islam today is because it doesn't mean peace. And he decided, well, I'm going to have to take it to the enemy directly because our soldiers are not being allowed to fight the enemy. So he decides to wrap himself up in pigskin leather and act as ruthlessly as he can. He fights like a inverted jihad against jihad. And as the story progresses, his power progresses as well.
Any of your family members read your cartoon series?
I'm not sure.
The family, yeah.
I think one of them...
Are you in touch with them at all?
Not really. Not really.
You're the tragedy of their family?
I'm the red sheep. The red hair.
Bosch, before we go, what is Islam?
Islam is submission. Islam is death and destruction. Islam is here to control. Islam is here to make life on earth hell.
What is the Quranic argument against ISIS?
There is none.
Some Muslims just say they hate ISIS, but they don't have a Quranic foundation.
There's no Quranic argument. I mean, the only thing they can say is, well, you have your religion, we have ours, and we live and let live. But that was before. That was after the fact of the abrogated verses, of the violent verses in the Quran.
Bosch Fawstin, our audience is going to want to absolutely read your comic book series, The Infidel featuring Pigman. Where do they go?
Comixology.com.
Comixology.com, but you also have your own blog?
I do. Fawstin.blogspot.com.
Fantastic. Bosch Fawstin, an honor to have you here. Thank you for everything that you do, for telling the truth, for being so brave. And it's really a voice and breath of fresh air to hear truth-telling in a world full of willful blindness.
I appreciate that, Jimmy.
Thank you very much, Bosch. And best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you next week on the Glazov Gang. Good night.